Hey, friend, what's up? How's your day going? How's your minute going? Um, my minute, I'm not sure if we're counting the last 60 seconds or like since this minute began. If I go by my pocket watch, let's see here. Um, okay, so it just hit the minute. Okay, so my minute's up. So I can't even tell you. It's all over. But it was a great minute, yeah, on my end. I mean, it's just being here in the moment, kind of taking myself very seriously, getting very stressed and resisting the flow of life. Oh, sorry, the other way, other way. Just kind of floating along, doing my thing. So hope you're floating along in your own majestic direction, like the godly creature you are. Now a little song, and then we get into some uh, brief exposition of the dark side of criticism, complaining, suspicion. Dark feeling my mind can accept. Ooh, that suspicion, it's making me go red. I don't know it's true, but I could tell you, I swear I would put you through hell and back if my own dark heart wanted to attack. Ooh, those suspicious vibes. Ooh, my little critiquer within. Oh, suspicion, complaining, and criticism. Right. Okay. So here's the deal. I think basically I like the truth, and I like to talk about like what I think, especially when it's things that will uplift everyone, and uplift me. So positive or negative. The whole nihilism thing, like I said, recent episode, doesn't make sense. If you think it through, doesn't make sense. Um, there are some things are better than others. On some level, everything just is what it is. You just accept it, and whatever is now or is in the past, future you can change. That's all right. But whatever is, accept it, and then that allows you to you know take control of what could be. you know so you focus on what you have the power to actually do and create. Don't get tricked wasting your energy resisting something that's already happened. It's inevitable. It's already now. So someone's upset at you. Okay, you can't control how they feel, so you can control how you feel and how you communicate. So focus on that. But anyway, but like some things are better ultimately on you know it's fair to say, like something, if we destroy the planet and everything's just a wasteland, that's much worse than if it's a beautiful, verdant jungle, but also full of gleaming cities of happy, balanced human beings who are exploring innovation and science and technology, but also grounded with their humanity and love and just music and all this kind of stuff. The beautiful, balanced way of living. So, and in your own life, oh, am I going to be on crack and just, letting my friends down and stuff, and I'm being unreliable, or am I going to be kind of building my dreams and delaying gratification and really building up and enjoying a deep satisfaction and helping other people do the same, being there for them. So to that end, sometimes I think you got to criticize people, but it can get out of control. I'm guilty of it, definitely to some extent, um, where it's like, man, like, these gangster bankers are just taking over the planet, and they control the media, through direct ownership and through media, the advertising, like 70% of advertising in a lot of the mainstream media comes from pharmaceutical corporations, for example, um, at least in America, possibly globally, not sure. But and you can see that oh, the saying these things which aren't true, and it helps the people who give them huge amounts of money and who happen to own them, basically, like BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street. Oh, I know they say money is the root of all evil, but they also say don't be a conspiracy theorist. So therefore, nothing to see here. You know, so you see things like this, and it's like, well, should I just say nothing? Isn't that the whole lesson from the Soviet Union? Alexander Solzhenitsyn was like, all the whole thing was built upon lies. Basically, when like or is it and George Orwell said, like, when truth is something like to the effect of, like, in a totalitarian system, um, where the society is based on lies, to tell the truth is a revolutionary act. And basically, and this is what Jordan Peterson's been saying for like a decade now, being like, look, things are going in a weird direction, and you can't just be wishful thinking like, oh, everything's fine, let's be friendly to everyone. It's like, hey, some people don't think that, and they're trying to, move things in a certain direction. We need to be able to be honest and to be able to criticize certain things and certain people. And it doesn't need to be personal. You can say, like, I can criticize Barack Obama for not closing Guantanamo Bay, for persecuting Julian Assange, who's now, his extradition. They're still trying to extradite him to the USA, and it's just terrible what they're doing to Julian Assange of WikiLeaks. This journalist, a hero, just committed no crime. Anyway, um, uh, actually did a great service and revealed crimes, to us, very importantly. But basically, look, there are these. You need to be able to criticize and point things out. But I think you can do it. So let's say criticizing. Let's start with complaining. It's a bit easier, right? Like, maybe I'd say complaining is more. It's like, oh, there's a problem, I'm complaining. Criticizing could be proactive. It's not necessarily a reaction. It's just, I don't like that you do this. Um, but I would say, like, also bigger things, I guess, criticizing. It's more. I'm not like complaining that, the WEF are trying to strip the European farmers of their land and usher in a dystopian, neo-feudalism nightmare, technocratic fascism. Um, I'm not complaining, you know, like I would complain, like, oh, sorry, excuse me, my food's cold. Could you get me a warm or a hot new plate, please? You know? So it's all about the internal energy, with everything we do, whether it's we're criticizing a plate of food or the person who brought it, like, uh, you're saying, hey, look, you just ruined this thing. You weren't paying attention. I saw you. You're looking at your phone, and now you just ruined this thing. What, what? That you shouldn't have done that. Both of those examples, you're kind of complaining, say there's a problem, you're communicating about the problem. One, but you can do it in a way where you're internally judging them, like, you're wrong, you shouldn't have done that. But that violates the whole thing we're already talking about of, like, well, it's already happened, it's already inevitable, so you don't need to resist it. And it doesn't gain anything. You might think, yeah, I'm making them uncomfortable, they're less likely to do it again in future. But actually, they'll just resist you. They'll be like, screw you, who are you, And but if you go at it with, like, I think it's very effective, actually, and it's also the kind of ethical and logical thing to do. You don't judge them, but you still communicate. You go like, oh, this food's cold. I would like another plate. I would like some hot food. Thanks. They're like, oh, okay. They're more likely to just go, oh, yeah, no problem. I don't have to resist. Okay, I'll go do it. Sure. Or if they're like, oh, no, that's fine. You can't do that. You can pay more. But no, no, like, I paid for it. Yeah, I need, give me the food. You know, you can laugh if you want, whatever. You can be quite assertive. And in fact, you can be very assertive. It's much more, being assertive can be much more comfortable for you because you're not being mean. You don't have to get angry or anything. Um, Also with people, you can say, instead of being like, "What are you doing? What's wrong with you? Why'd you do that?" You just be like, "Oh, like, hey, what's going on there? Hey, buddy. I mean, like, what are you doing? And yeah, I think you get through, and they're kind of like, oh, they can register the kindness on some level that you're criticizing them, but you're not judging them. It's constructive criticism. Um, and sometimes you need to do the criticism sandwich. So sorry, compliment, criticism, compliment, or positive, negative, positive. So you'd be like, oh, hey, like, I really appreciate, like, how much work you're putting into this project. Like, see, I'm putting in a lot of work, but I see you're doing it. I really appreciate that. Not everyone would do that. Um, that said, I have noticed your approach. I don't agree with one thing. You keep doing this, but I think like that's not. I just think it's going to cause us problems for these ABC reasons, you know. Um, but again, you know, that's like I'm just saying this because I'm communicating. I know we have the same goals here, and so I know I can respect you as an open-minded person. So I trust you to say this, you know, something like that, right? Sometimes if it's very delicate, you would have to kind of just, on one level, you could be like, just be direct, be honest. But like, we're not all totally in control of our egos, so there is a place for kind of, tactical communication. Anyway, so that's an example of where you can criticize or complain. Let's say complaining, yeah, and you don't judge them internally because it's already happened. It's already the way it is, so you don't need to resist it. Um, and even if it's like an enduring personality trait, it's like, well, okay, that is their personality trait. That's their habitual mode of being. You can't, if you don't wish it away, okay, try to communicate with them or lead by example or whatever if you want, then that's what's within your power. Okay, so then criticism, like say, you could say a similar thing, criticism for small stuff, but we could also use that word to apply to like bigger stuff, right? Like, criticizing the government if they're doing this or that. Like, my government here in Ireland are just doing all these completely insane things where you have to think they're either incompetent, uh, ideologically brainwashed by some wacky ideologies, um, corrupt, just being paid off by someone, big business or something to help them, or power hungry, and they're actually just, like tyrants, you know. And I think there's probably a mix of all of those involved, to be honest. Um, and I think that, it's kind of thing where the tyranny side, that's probably a smaller number. Maybe it could be a very small percentage of the powerful people in Ireland, say, are like up to that. They're kind of in league with people trying to suppress democracy and bring in this global government and all that. Um, Yet you only, because of the nature of tyranny, you only need a very small amount of salt to totally change the flavor of a meal because it's just very powerful. A tiny amount of dye will completely change the color of all the water. So, that's the thing. I think, a very small number of organized, you know, people who don't have empathy, or they have a certain belief system in their head that justifies their actions of predating upon others or creating a parasitic or predatory relationship rather than a reciprocal, respectful, mutually respectful relationship with the public, then yeah. So anyway, whatever. I got this. There's this situation. They're trying to bring in law censoring free speech. There's no border. They're just like, yeah, bring in everyone, whatever. Even though the Irish people are like, hey, hey, we're very, very hospitable. We love people. We're very friendly. We're renowned for this. But like there's no room in the hospitals and the schools and the houses. There's people on families on the streets because there's not enough houses, and we've had this huge influx of people. It's a tiny island, like, and the government's, oh yeah, whatever, whatever, bring more and more and more in, and or and sovereignty, like, oh yeah, just the WHO, yeah, they want to bring in this treaty where they can totally control, put in, pandemics. The lockdowns were terrible. They did nothing. They just caused problems, and that was obvious beforehand. But even for those who had some reason, oh, it makes sense. Now it's been proven in Johns Hopkins, of all places, who are very deeply involved in this whole COVID madness, um, did a big study that found, oh yeah, did nothing. Maybe that was the point. They didn't find that it caused harm, or did they? I think they said it did nothing, but yeah, I think, okay, or maybe they said it did harm, but it definitely did a lot of harm. The lockdowns, overall, more deaths and injuries of all kinds. Anyway, so the government, they're not being reasonable, and so I think it's very important that we criticize that, not to judge people and to judge them, but to communicate about what needs to change. If we don't do it, then we'll end up, that's how, Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin, these people come to power. Partly, it's through violence and stuff, but a lot of it is just, say in the case of Hitler, it was a bit of intimidation, and then everyone, ooh, I don't want to have my window smashed, and I don't want to be beaten, and, and fair enough, but then if you don't have enough people resisting, then everyone goes to a much darker place. And I think if Germany in 1946, looking at the rubble of their society, they if they could go back in time, a whole lot of people would have just charged, swamped the Nazis and just gotten rid of them much earlier. Said, look, if I die, if I whatever, but we're all going to a very bad place if we don't resist. And so, I'm a very optimistic person, but I think you've got to be realistic too and practical. And if you're, uh, you know, looking, I have an episode, why it's safest, or is it? I think phrase it as a question. Uh, is it safest to assume a global coup is underway, like someone's trying to take over the world? I think it is. That is. I don't know for certain that that's happening, but it definitely looks like it. If you're honest and pay attention and are hardworking and you read a lot and listen to a lot of experts, um, and read between the lines and think about it, and you can read people's emotions, you know, uh, that's definitely the most plausible explanation. As people like Brett Weinstein have been saying, they say the recent Joe Rogan podcast, Brett Weinstein, great stuff. He's pointing out hey Joe, I mean, look, I can see how hard you're working to ignore what's right in front of you. Joe's like, no, I'm trying to steal, man. But basically, yeah, we don't want to think it's true. But anyway, whatever. So I think things could go in a bad direction. So we need and that's just one thing. That's like a big thing. But there's, even in smaller things with your friends or whatever, your friends drinking too much. Okay, do you say nothing? No, I think you should communicate. Do what feels right. But in many cases, it's wise to communicate, and that you don't think something's good. And I appreciate when people do that to me. It helps me. You know, um, I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. So we help each other. Humans are social creatures, not just that we need that to feel good, but also to be good. To be balanced, we need each other. We are outsourcing sanity, as I think Jordan Peterson said, to the network of our peers. And this is how we figure it out together. And partly the ego, the self, the true self is not the ego, but whatever, let's call it, the, on that level, your individuated, self, here I am, I'm a little me in the universe. Secretly, you are the universe, higher consciousness, that's your true self, but whatever, let's not go there for now. Um, it's very useful for nature to adapt so that the human individual believes in oneself, like, oh yeah, I am right, and this is, it's right that I'm going to kill this animal and take it, and yeah, I can see its little baby, but I'm killing the animal because I need to feed my baby, and the other animals are the same. This is the way we evolve. Like, you need to prioritize. Charity starts at home. You need to prioritize yourself. um, but that can then go astray. So that will cause you to persevere through against the odds and overcome the challenges. And evolution's had asteroidal impacts, famines, just insane, crazy things going on. Um, and so this is this has evolved that tendency. Those who didn't have that tendency to put themselves a radical tendency to put oneself first, they didn't survive. And so, okay, that's the platform we're working on, we're evolving on. And so, however, that can go astray where it's like, oh, here's some information you might not be aware of. And then, like, people, oh, well, no, that's different to what I believe, so fuck you. Pardon my French. Um, and so, you know, um, you have to balance it or like, oh no, hey, I'm a sane, logical, hardworking person. I'm reasonable. I'm not smoking too much pot or whatever. You know, how, come on, I got it under control. It's all perfect. And then, so you can see how that tendency might cause self-delusion. And that's where, luckily, we live in groups. And so the group might be all equally deluded about our relationship with the other group who we're at war with. But when it comes to within the group, like, oh, hey, you're smoking too much, wacky tobacco, like, the other people don't have that bias because, well, I don't care. That's your thing. I've got no dog in the game there, no dog in the fight. I don't care. Like, yeah, they'll just tell you. And but then maybe they are gambling too much, and where that's obvious to me because I don't have any stake in, denying. It doesn't affect my self identity. So we can help each other like that. And then even maybe the tribes who are fighting, whatever, overall, let's say there's say there's some Irish tribes back in the day, clans, fighting, and maybe the king can go, hey, I know you two both think you're right, but I can see from the outside, like this is what's going on, and they can, resolve it. Or the other, tribes in the area can see it and go, hey, these two are fighting, but we need to put an end to it. This is out of control. Um, and then maybe, but when that whole group, when it's all of Munster looking at all of Connacht or something, maybe there's a big war, or they say Connacht and Ulster, the Táin Quailga, the old story, the Táin, the cattle raid of Cooley, this big war or whatever. Great book, and I think it's the oldest epic in Western literature. But anyway, then okay, it goes out the window. But then maybe you need the bigger community where you got the High King, and maybe the other kind of provinces, whatever, who can say like, oh, hey, you two, this is what's going on. They can kind of bring in a more holistic perspective. So the point is, through networks, we are outsourcing our sanity, and so it's necessary to be able to criticize and to communicate. And I think, the powers that be that run society. And here's one thing, right? It's where my criticism could get out of control. In the past, I had a tendency to think, yeah, they're all crazy and they're stupid or evil or something like that. Um, uh, or just arrogant, and like they're just not questioning themselves enough. But then maybe I was, arrogant and not questioning myself enough. Maybe these people are perfectly aware that like the way people think like that it's not fair what they're doing, that it's unjust, and but maybe they have other reasons we haven't thought about for why they're doing what they're doing. Maybe there's some alien race which is trying to predate us, and they're trying to like, hey, we need to get a global government really fast, and but we can't tell you that we're doing it because then the aliens will know what we're doing. So we have to force it through. We have to be like, and in the process we might turn into monsters, and it might just become a global dystopia. But we're doing our best not to let that happen. But there's no other option because we can't. I don't know. Whatever. That's just some random example that pops into my head. Maybe there's some story that justifies it or that they think justifies it. I don't know. But I think the point is like when we're criticizing the powers that be, it's good to kind of maintain a bond of affection and, human, empathy and say like, hey, these are, children who grew up, and they have children themselves. And, some could be very, very far, and not just, the powers that be globally, but, in your country or in your neighborhood or whatever, in your family, say with your parents, if you're a, teenager and your parents, you think like, oh, they're just not fair and whatever. Try to think they have their perspective, and try to communicate with them, but I don't see any benefit to having the internal judgment of them. It's just communicate. But and if you do it without that internal judgment anyway, I think they're more likely to take it on board. Because if they feel like they're under attack, they'll put up the wall and defend themselves. That thing from Eckhart Tolle, like what you resist persists, and what you fight grows stronger, or what you fight you strengthen, something like that. So I think that's the thing. Like we need to find a way to be able to communicate. Say I'm thinking in Ireland or globally, like in Europe, communicate the criticisms of what's wrong about what's happening, whether they listen or not. And then we take things into our own hands anyway. I think, we have to protect ourselves, and enforce our rights, stand our ground, Um, but, try to avoid being any more threatening than you need to, or divisive, or judgmental, like Jesus said, love thine enemies, you know. Um, so, and I think that makes it a lot nicer. The whole thing is like, yeah, hey, we're all on the same team. Come, we're trying to help each other. I think a lot of people who would be like, oh, this is too intense. I don't want to get involved in whatever situation it is. Um, or they're like, oh, it's exhausting, because it's just so demoralizing. Whatever. If it's like, hey, this we're all together. We're trying to. It's about teamwork. Then I think the morale can be a lot easier to mobilize. It's like, come on, you do it for your team, wouldn't you? Oh yeah, okay. I think I can find the energy and the whatever's required, inner resources. All right, and then suspicion. I think suspicion's kind of like the silent internal version of these things, where you're kind of like, maybe I should criticize you or complain, or it's like lack of trust, right? Suspicion. Um, but so it can affect the way you interpret what people do, the way you respond to people the way you, just the things you do and don't do. Um, but I think again, it's very similar in that suspicion can be healthy. Like if, uh, what's the story? Is it Aesop's fable or whatever? There's like an old lion that's, grows too weak, so it can't hunt anymore, and it just lives in this cave. And whenever animals come in, it pretends to be sick, and like they come in, and when they to help it or something, and then it attacks them, and eats them, and then some fox or something is coming up and goes, oh, like why are you in that cave, whatever, and he's like, oh, I'm sick or whatever, and like, oh yeah, come in here so I can can see you. And he's like, oh, well, I would, but I just notice all the tracks go into the cave, but no tracks leave the cave. you know, Something like that. Um, so that this fox or whatever it was is like suspicion of the lion was very useful. It saved its life. So there's definitely a time and a place for suspicion. Um, to notice what is right and what is dangerous, and what's safe, and um, but then it can get out of control. Obviously, if you're like, oh, everyone's against me, okay, then that's no way to live. You're going to get psychotic very quickly. And yeah, I think in the border area, um, uh, I think when in doubt, the Dumbledore principle is pretty good. Trust, err on the side of trust. You know, Dumbledore, like Albus Dumbledore from the Harry Potter books. Um, he, he's criticized by people being like, oh, Dumbledore just trusts too much. Um, and yet, it seems like Dumbledore doesn't trust everyone equally, but he trusts the potential in everyone to do right. And so, but there's certain people where you can see his actions. He's not like, he doesn't get screwed over by anyone at any point, because of, his trusting too much that I'm aware of. I mean, maybe Grindelwald a little, but basically, you know, uh, when in doubt, he trusts, and I think that's wise. Uh, Both for two reasons. One, you could be right, you know, like your imagination's overactive, and actually, yeah, you should be trusting this person, or this government, or this institution, or trust that something's true, or trust that something will happen. Like, oh yeah, this person can do it. Don't suspect them of not being up to the task, for example, like doubting them. You could use it in that sense also, I guess. And just so a they might be your suspicions might not be founded. Like it could very well be that, like, yeah, you just trust and all will be well. Um, or and also what sometimes happens is you're actually, if you were like, oh yeah, no, I don't trust you, then you would be right. They're like, yeah, okay, I was going to screw you over. Fair enough. But then where sometimes I think if you trust people and you go the you extend that kindness, that trust to people, they can transform. They're touched by it, especially if it's clear that there's the potential that they're trying to mess with you, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, no problem, let's do it. Good, you know. And I think if they can realize, like, oh, you are extending an act of love there, even though you know that they have betrayed you or that they were planning to. I would imagine, yeah, there's cases where, and even if it's not that intense, a smaller version, cases where that will transform people. It'll touch them, and then they will become trustworthy. Like the thing where it's like, yeah, tr trust them and they become trustworthy. Or like there's something where I think Italian factory workers were on uh, were were on strike or something, and the factories were like, yeah, okay, you can't go on strike anymore. So then they started doing these half strike things where they would just like work really slowly, um, and but then I can't remember the exact story, but or and then saying like the contrast would be, I don't know if there's a potential or if it actually happened, but where you trust them and you go, yeah, okay, do your job, and then we're all good. And then when people go, oh, that's how you see me, okay, well, I there's a kind of an instinct to reciprocate. If you give trust, usually people return the trust. You give respect, they return respect. Usually, not always. But and so they would, you know, okay, well, yeah, great, the company likes us, all right, I'm a man of honor, I'll do some good work here for this company that respects me, you know. Um, so yeah, I'd say that's it. All right, what are your thoughts? Any opinions? Let me know if you do. If you like this, subscribe. And you know, whatever, you can follow me on social media if you want. Um, I'll like, you know, comment stuff on Twitter, Rendezvous with Jamie McGlue. Um, and yeah, that's it. So have a great weekend, everyone. And um, I just want to say, your vibe is just so good. I don't know what it is exactly, but you're looking amazing. Enjoy.